If you have ever wondered what the private life of ancient Egyptians was really like, let's travel back in time over 3,000 years to the banks of the Nile, where the pyramids stand tall under the golden sun and where everyday secrets are preserved in the sands of history. In ancient Egyptian society, love, marriage, and the delicate aspects of human life were not only topics of interest, but also closely linked to beliefs, rituals, and spiritual life. In ancient Egypt, sex was not only an instinct, but also considered an essential part of life, closely linked to the natural reproductive process. The Egyptians believed that the gods also had private lives like humans, and even the mythological stories about the gods Isis, Osiris, Seth, or Horus contained elements related to love, jealousy, and sexual acts. Therefore, the ancients did not view sex as taboo. On the contrary, they saw it as a natural expression of life. Marriage in ancient Egypt did not have elaborate rituals like many other civilizations. Two people came together based on an agreement between two families or out of voluntary affection. Sometimes, just sharing a meal and making a vow was enough for them to officially become husband and wife. Nevertheless, Egyptian society still gave special respect to monogamous relationships, and faithfulness in marriage was highly valued. Ancient texts show that love between spouses was described gently, deeply, and sometimes very romantically through love letters preserved on papyrus. Regarding sexual life, the ancient Egyptians were quite open compared to many contemporary cultures. They were not overly taboo when discussing this topic, but neither were they ostentatious. Drawings, small statues, or carvings on the walls of tombs and temples sometimes depicted scenes of intimacy or tender moments between couples. However, these images were often symbolic, associated with fertility, wishing for abundant harvests and many offspring, rather than for showing off or entertainment. Women in ancient Egypt had a much higher status compared to women in other civilizations of the same era. They could own property, divorce, and even file lawsuits if they felt they were treated unfairly in marriage. Marriage contracts sometimes clearly stipulated the wife's rights, from property and child custody to alimony if the marriage ended. Because of this, emotional life in Egypt was somewhat free, equal, and mutually respectful. Sexuality in religious life also plays a significant role. Some rituals worshiping the goddesses Isis or Hathor, goddesses of love, family, and fertility, often include dances or songs praising the beauty of the body, vitality, and romantic love. Sometimes the worship of these deities is accompanied by fertility symbols, expressing the community's desire for growth and development. Regarding contraception, the ancient Egyptians were also quite creative. Some medical papyrus records show that they used mixtures of honey, beeswax, herbs, and even crocodile dung to create a kind of pessary aimed at preventing pregnancy. However, the actual effectiveness of these methods remains a subject of debate among modern scientists. Besides, life is not only about love and romantic moments. Jealousy, infidelity, or non-traditional relationships also exist in Egyptian society. Legal documents show that adultery is condemned, especially if committed by a woman. A husband can unilaterally divorce if he discovers his wife is unfaithful, but conversely, a woman also has the right to leave her husband if she is abused or mistreated. Homosexuality also appears in some myths and works of art. Although it is not described in great detail, some Egyptologists believe that ancient Egyptian society was quite tolerant of homosexual relationships, at least compared to later cultures. Regarding reproductive health and sexually transmitted diseases, the ancient Egyptians had many unique treatment methods. They used herbs, perfumes, and folk remedies to treat infertility, menstrual pain, or sexually transmitted diseases. However, medical knowledge at that time was still limited, so the effectiveness was still somewhat hit or miss. In particular, giving birth is an important event. Pregnant women are often carefully cared for and participate in ceremonies wishing health for both mother and baby. The midwives hold an important position in the community, both performing healthcare roles and participating in spiritual ceremonies for the mother. Children are considered blessings bestowed by the gods, so having many children is encouraged. In noble families, maintaining the lineage is even more highly valued, sometimes leading to consanguineous marriages, such as between close cousins or even between siblings within the royal family, in order to preserve the divine bloodline. Finally, the stories about love and sexuality in ancient Egypt are not just isolated tales, but also reflect a culture that values life, continuity, and the close connection between humans and nature. When night falls by the Nile River, amidst the sound of the wind blowing through the wheat fields and the silent boats drifting on the water, the mysteries of the private lives of the ancients quietly drift along with time, becoming somber yet vibrant hues in the legendary picture of ancient Egypt. And so, despite going through many ups and downs, the secrets about the emotional life, love, and sexuality of the Egyptians remain an endless topic for those who want to learn about the past, about the people who once lived, loved, and left an indelible mark in the flow of human history.